You won't be joining us. My wife prefers to keep it only her family. After you paid for the whole vacation. That was the text my son sent me at exactly 11:02 p.m. 2 nights before the family trip I had been planning, funding, and dreaming about for 3 years. My name is Margaret Hayes. I'm 67 years old. And this is the story of how I went from being the family ATM to the woman who hit the emergency brake mid-flight. But let me back up, because betrayal doesn't happen in a single text message. It builds slowly, like rust on metal, invisible until the whole structure collapses. I was sitting at my kitchen table when that message came through, my reading glasses perched on my nose, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the house. I had just finished organizing the last of the travel bags, one for each grandchild, labeled by hand with their names and filled with sunscreen, snacks, and little keychains that said aloha and grandma loves you. My hands were still sticky with tape. The phone buzzed. I picked it up, expecting maybe a thank you, maybe some excitement, maybe even a simple "we can't wait." Instead, I got this: "Mom, you should understand your place. My wife prefers to keep the vacation just for her family. You've already done your part by paying. It's not personal. It's just simpler this way." I stared at those words until the screen went dark. Then I read them again and again. Not personal. Simpler this way. You've already done your part. My son, the boy I raised alone after his father died. The boy who used to bring me pink tulips every March. The boy who once drew a picture of me wearing a cape with the caption "My mom saves the day," had just told me I wasn't part of her family. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, in the dark kitchen, the glow from the under-cabinet lights casting long shadows across the counters I'd scrubbed earlier that evening. And for the first time in 3 years of planning, saving, and sacrificing, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. Shame. Not anger. Not even sadness. Just shame. The quiet, aching kind that makes you feel like a fool for hoping. Because hope is what had kept me going. Hope that this trip would bring us back together. Hope that once we were all under that Hawaiian sky, with waves whispering against the shore and children squealing in the sand, maybe love would be enough to remind them that I mattered, that I belonged, that I was more than just the woman who wrote the checks. But that text made it clear. I had been building a dream on quicksand. 3 years of saving. 3 years of tutoring English online at night when my joints ached and my eyes burned. 3 years of skipping lunches, canceling cable, turning down the heat, and wearing double socks to save money. All for a trip I was never meant to take. Let me tell you how it started, because understanding the ending requires knowing the beginning. 4 years ago, my husband James died. Heart attack. Sudden. No warning. One moment he was laughing at something on TV. The next moment, he was gone. We'd been married for 42 years. We'd gone to Hawaii for our honeymoon, broke as could be, sharing a single suitcase, splitting sandwiches at lunchtime. James got sunburned so badly on the second day he wore a bedsheet like a cape. For the rest of the week, we laughed more than we ever would again. After he died, I made a quiet promise to myself. I would take the family back to Hawaii. I'd let the grandkids see what their grandfather saw. Let my son Nathan feel the sand his father once walked. Maybe it would reconnect us. Maybe it would remind him of where he came from, of who loved him first. So I started saving. I called it the dream jar. An old mason jar I kept behind the flower in the kitchen cabinet. Every time I skipped buying something small, I'd slip that money into the jar. $5 here, $10 there. Over time, it grew. I canceled my cable subscription. I stopped buying my favorite tea. I declined lunch invitations, telling friends I had a tight month. They didn't know I was putting every dime toward this trip. toward a memory, toward one last beautiful moment as a family. I researched villas that could house all 9 of us. I called the travel agent a dozen times asking about bed arrangements, dietary needs, wheelchair access for Nathan's mother-in-law, Linda. I ordered custom t-shirts with everyone's names printed on them. Family is forever 2024. I chose a beachfront home with a fire pit where I imagined us sitting in a circle, lighting candles one by one, each saying a word to describe James. I would bring his photo, the one of him laughing with his head thrown back, sun in his hair, and hold it while we all said something good. I imagined tears, then laughter, then healing. But mostly, I imagined being seen, being thanked, being held. None of that was going to happen now, because somewhere along the way, I stopped being part of the picture. And I don't mean metaphorically, I mean literally. I noticed it slowly at first. Fewer group photos at family gatherings. When they posed. At Thanksgiving, my daughter-in-law Stephanie would say, "Let's do one with just the kids." Then, "Let's do one with just our family unit." By the time they were done taking pictures, there was no time for one with me. At Christmas, they all wore matching red sweaters with white trees. Mine was blue. I didn't even know there was a theme. When I asked, Nathan brushed it off. "Oh, you're not into that stuff, Mom." But I just wasn't asked. Stephanie took over hosting every holiday. Everything happened at her mother Linda's house. Now, I was invited, but I felt like a guest who'd wandered in uninvited. Once, I heard her tell someone, "Nathan's mom is here too," as if I needed to be explained, as if I was an afterthought. And always, she smiled like she didn't mean harm. But harm doesn't always come with raised voices. Sometimes it comes with exclusion, with omission, with being the one left out of every photo, every story, every seat at the table. Still, I held on. Because this trip was going to fix everything. This trip was going to remind them. That was the story I told myself. Until that text. "You've already done your part by paying." Suddenly, every skipped meal, every cold night, every tutoring session spent squinting at a screen felt foolish. I hadn't been building a bridge. I'd been building a pedestal they never planned to visit. I thought about the candles I'd packed, the moment I'd imagined by the fire. But the truth hit me like a wave breaking against rock. They didn't want my stories. They didn't want my memories. They just wanted my money. And now that they had it, they wanted me to disappear. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark and asked myself a question no mother should ever have to ask. When did I become a burden in the family I built? The morning after the text, I woke up at 5 a.m. Not because I had anywhere to be, but because I couldn't stop thinking. I moved through the house like a ghost, folding the same blanket twice, straightening picture frames that were already straight, wiping counters that were already spotless. The silence clung to me like fog. Later that afternoon, I opened my email to check a grocery receipt. That's when I saw it. Subject, final itinerary. Hawaii family package sent from the travel agency. I clicked it without thinking. A full breakdown appeared on my screen. Flight schedules, villa check-in times, excursions, dinner reservations, rental car pickup, luau tickets, snorkeling lessons. Everything I had worked so hard to organize. I scrolled slowly, eyes scanning for confirmation of what I already suspected but hadn't wanted to face. There were 8 names. Nathan, Stephanie. Their 2 kids, Emma and Lucas. Stephanie's parents, Linda and Robert. Stephanie's sister, Ashley. Ashley's boyfriend, Derek. 8 plane tickets, 8 late greeting passes. 8 guests registered at the villa. Not mine. Not Mom. Not Margaret. Not anywhere. I zoomed in, thinking maybe there'd been a mistake. Maybe I was listed under guest 9. Maybe they'd added me separately. But there were no other attachments. No side bookings. No separate confirmation. Just 8. I sat there staring at that screen for a long time. Then I closed the laptop gently, like it might shatter if I moved too fast. That evening, Stephanie called. Not Nathan. Stephanie. Her voice was overly cheerful, like she was hosting a morning talk show. Hi, Margaret, just checking in. We're wrapping up packing. I hope everything's set on your end money-wise. I think. The final payment hits tomorrow, right? I didn't answer right away. Then I asked softly, is there anything you need me to bring? Any games for the kids? Snacks for the flight? I know Emma gets motion sick sometimes. A pause. A sharp, awkward silence. Bring, she echoed, as if the word itself confused her. Yes. For the trip. Oh, no, Margaret. You don't need to bring anything. We've got it all handled. I pushed gently. I was just thinking I could pack some. She cut me off, still smiling in her voice, but with steel beneath it now. Margaret, honestly, we've got everything covered. You really don't need to worry. In fact, Nathan and I were talking, and we think it might be best if you took this trip to rest. Stay home. Focus on you. You've done so much already. She didn't say it with malice, but the finality was there. They had planned the whole thing without me. And now they were pretending it was for my own good. After the call ended, I stood at my kitchen window, staring out at the bird bath James had installed 20 years ago. The water was perfectly still, not a ripple, just like me. I walked to the closet and pulled down a small fireproof lockbox. Inside were the documents I'd kept since opening the travel fund 3 years ago. I flipped through them. Slowly, there it was, in bold letters, account holder. Margaret Rose Hayes, authorized users, none. No co-signers, no shared ownership, no alternate access. I sat down and opened my banking app. There it was, travel fund, $21,763. 8 for status, active linked cards, 6 primary billing owner. Methods when it hit me. They had erased me from the trip, but they hadn't erased me from the account. They had spent my generosity like it was there, right? They had discarded my presence like it was a burden. But the thing about banks, they can close. I didn't make any decisions that night. Instead, I made myself a cup of peppermint tea and sat with the silence. I let myself feel it fully, not just the insult, but the clarity. They didn't forget me, they omitted me. And worse, they assumed I'd be too passive, too old, too grateful for crumbs to notice. They thought I'd stay in the shadows and smile anyway. They forgot who raised them. I closed the app. And for the first time in months, I slept through the night. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone to announce what I discovered. No dramatic phone calls. No explosive accusations. I simply made tea, sat in the chair James used to call the lookout, and stared out the window while my laptop blinked awake beside me. The house was still. No TV, no radio. Just the wind tapping against the glass and the occasional hum of the fridge. And in that silence, something inside me settled. Not like calm, like stone. I was no longer confused. I was no longer waiting for an apology. I was planning. I opened the banking application and scrolled to the travel fund section. My name was still at the top. Account owner. I checked the linked cards. 6 in total. 1 for the resort. 1 for the car rental company. 1 for the airline. 3 for incidentals, food, excursions, entertainment. All set to auto draw from the same source. My fund? I clicked the settings tab. There it was. Transaction lock/freeze mod. I hovered over the toggle. A small note beneath it read, Activate this setting to pause all outgoing charges from this account. Linked cards will be disabled. No new charges can be authorized without account owner verification. One click. That was all it would take. But I didn't click it yet. Instead, I opened another tab, my calendar. I marked the departure day with a red circle. They were scheduled to leave LAX at 10:45 a.m. If they arrived 2 hours early for check-in, that meant they'd be at the gate around 8:30 a.m. That would be the perfect moment. Just as they queued up, confident everything had been paid for, that's when the cards would stop working. But only if I wanted them to. Only if I held the silence long enough. Still, I didn't press the button. Not yet. Because once you decide to stop playing the role people assign you, the good mother, the generous grandmother, the smiling supporter who never asks for anything back, there's no returning to that mask. And I wanted to be sure. So I gave them one last chance. Just one. I sent a message to Nathan. Simple, soft, let me know if you'd like any help with the kids, bags or snacks before the trip. I can bring some extra motion sickness bands for Emma. No reply. An hour passed. 2. I could see that the message had been read. Still nothing. No thank you. No acknowledgement. No we appreciate you. Just nothing. That's when I knew there was no misunderstanding. This wasn't about miscommunication or forgetfulness or Stephanie's preferences. This was about entitlement. About the quiet cruelty of people who think love is a one-way transaction. I was the vault, and they were cashing out. But not anymore. I returned to the banking app. My finger hovered over the button again. Then, without hesitation, I clicked. The icon turned blue. Freeze mode activated. All transactions are now paused. Manual authorization required to resume. Done. I stared at the screen for a moment, letting it sink in. There would be no confirmation email sent to them. No alert. No warning. They would find out the way I found out I wasn't invited, in the most silent, undeniable way possible. I leaned back in my chair, took a sip of tea, and exhaled. It wasn't revenge. It was reality. A reality they chose. But that didn't mean I had to fund it. Over the next 48 hours, I said nothing. When Stephanie posted a photo of matching beach hats on Instagram, I didn't comment. When Nathan texted the family group chat, ready for takeoff, I didn't respond. And when my youngest granddaughter Emma sent me a voice note saying, "Grandma, we're going to see sea turtles," I saved it, pressed it to my heart, and whispered aloud, "I'm sorry, baby, but someone had to teach your parents the value of presents." Then I returned to my laptop and opened a new spreadsheet. This time, it wasn't for them. It was for me. I made a list titled, "Those Who Deserve to Be Seen." At the top, I wrote Carol, Beverly, Louise, Frances, Nora, Denise, each one a woman like me, overlooked, underestimated, over-used. And beneath each name, I began mapping what a vacation could look like, not for reward, but for restoration, not out of pity, but out of power. Because if I was going to be the one holding the checkbook, I would decide who was worth the trip. That night, I slept with the window open. The wind whispered like a secret finally spoken. They had their bags packed. They had their boarding passes printed. They thought the only thing left was the flight. But flights run on more than fuel. They run on trust. And they had none left with me. They left for the airport with matching luggage, straw hats, and that soft, smug air people wear when they think everything has gone exactly according to their plan. Stephanie posted a photo on Instagram from the backseat of the Uber. The kids grinning. Nathan making a peace sign. Her own caption reading, "Off to paradise. Family only, the last part cut like glass." I saw it while sitting at my kitchen table. sipping coffee from a chipped mug I'd owned since before Nathan was born. The same mug he once used to make me breakfast in bed when he was 9 years old. I didn't look away. I watched their story unfold frame by frame. At the airport, at check-in, at the gate, luggage stacked, kids jumping, Stephanie's mother Linda posing beside the airline sign like it was a red carpet. 8 smiles. No seat for me. Then the first message came in. Nathan, hey, getting a weird error at check-in. Can you check the travel account real quick? I didn't reply. 5 minutes passed. Then another message. Nathan, they're saying the card was declined multiple times. Do you see anything on your end? Still, I said nothing. Then the calls started. At first, one every 10 minutes. Then every 5. Then back to dashback. Voicemails followed. Mom, it's me. Just give me a quick call, please. Okay, I'm not sure what's going on, but we can't get the rental confirmed. It's saying funds unavailable. Can you look? Mom, please, the kids are freaking out. Just tell me if something happened to the account. I kept the phone face down. The clock read 8:27 a.m. The flight was scheduled to depart at 10:45 a.m. I pictured them standing at the counter, scanning and rescanning those plastic cards. Stephanie growing more frantic with each beep of denial. Her parents asking questions in low, sharp tones. Nathan sweating, trying to pretend he was still in control. Then came a voicemail with a different tone. Low, urgent, almost a whisper. Mom, I don't know what you did, but if this is because of the text, can we please talk? No apology. No admission. Just an offer to talk now that their plans had fallen apart. And still, I said nothing. The resort called next, not my phone, but via email. Subject, booking cancellation request confirmed. Dear Ms. Hayes, we have processed the requested cancellation of your villa booking. Due to the account freeze, associated charges have been reversed. As per your authority as the sole account holder, no further action is required. We hope to welcome you in the future. I read it once, then twice. And finally, I allowed myself a small, bitter breath of release. They would not be welcomed. Not there. Not now. Maybe not ever. At 10:40 a.m., Nathan texted again. We're boarding. Call me, please. But I didn't. They took off without a place to land, because money is only a guarantee when backed by trust, and they had broken theirs. By noon, I had over 50 missed calls from Nathan, from Stephanie, even from Linda. I didn't listen to any more voicemails. I went for a walk instead. The air was warm. Birds chirped. A neighbor waved and asked if I was heading anywhere for spring break. I smiled and said, not yet, but soon. When I returned, the phone had finally stopped ringing. Instead, there was one new message. Nathan, look, if this was about what we said, maybe we messed up. Okay, I don't know. Things got twisted. But the kids are here. They're excited. We can still fix this. Please just unlock the account. I promise we'll talk everything through when we get back. I stared at the screen. They wanted the vacation and postponed the apology. They wanted forgiveness without confession. They wanted me to fund their joy while they exiled mine. So no, I did not unlock the account. I did not answer the message, and I did not explain myself. Because I owed them nothing, because sometimes silence is the only reply strong enough to be heard. The refund arrived 2 days after their flight. It came in small notifications, one by one. First the resort, then the rental car company, the airline taxes and fees, the tour packages, the private chef deposit, the lays, the luau, the snorkeling excursion. All returned. All reversed. All mine again. My travel fund account once drained by love was full again. But this time, love would not be blind. This time, I would spend it differently, not for appearances, not for people who viewed me as a wallet with wrinkles. This time, I would spend it on those who knew what memory was worth because they too had lived lives of giving, without being seen. I opened my notebook, the same one I'd used to write down James's favorite songs, his old fishing recipes, and the names of every grandchild. I flipped to a clean page and wrote 3 words at the top, the forgotten woman underneath. I began listing names. Carol from Churcha, widow whose children hadn't visited in 5 Christmases. Frances, who still wore her wedding ring even though her husband had left her 30 years ago. Beverly, who cared for a brother with dementia and slept on a cot beside his hospital bed. Nora, who once told me, the worst part of old age isn't the pain, it's the invisibility. Lucille, my old neighbor, retired librarian who'd never seen the ocean. Diane, who had once given me a ride to the clinic when I twisted my ankle and never let me repay her. I made 6 phone calls. Each conversation was the same. Hesitant hellos, followed by stunned silence. Then disbelief. You want to take me where? Hawaii, dear. For 1 week. No catch, but why me? Because someone should. Because you matter. I made the bookings under my own name this time. 1 villa, 6 women, 7 days. No hashtags. No family, only captions. I called the travel agent and gave her the new names. I asked for separate beds and 1 large table with enough space for all of us to sit together every night. Then I went to the box beneath my bed. Inside was the photo of James the first had planned to place at the head of our family table. His smile still strong, still mischievous, still mine. I had the photo enlarged and framed not in gold, but in soft walnut, the kind of wood that grows darker and more beautiful with time. I packed it in bubble wrap and placed it carefully in my suitcase. When we arrived at the villa place perched above the ocean where palm trees swayed like slow dancers and the salt air kissed your skin before you knew it, I walked through the front door and set that photo on the dining table. No one questioned it. No one asked me to move it aside. That night, we sat together under hanging lights, the sound of waves whispering through the open doors. Carol wore a bright scarf and kept refilling everyone's wine. Beverly toasted to finally being somewhere I didn't have to clean after. Frances cried when she saw the view from her window. We didn't talk about who forgot. We talked about who we remembered. We didn't compare. Gars. We showed each other the strength beneath them. And James, James watched it all from the center of the table, his smile never fading. Each night, we lit 1 candle beside his photo. Each woman said 1 thing they wished someone had told them when they were 30. I see you. You're allowed to rest. You don't have to earn love. Your story matters. You are not a burden. You are never invisible. On the last night, we walked the shore in silence. The stars were so close it felt like you could reach up and tuck one into your pocket. The water curled around our ankles. The moon made silver of every wrinkle, every curve, every scar. I looked around at the women beside me, women who had given without asking, loved without limit, endured without applause. And I realized something. I hadn't just taken them on vacation. I had brought them home. To each other, to themselves, to the reminder that memory, when shared with the right people, becomes more than a flash in time. It becomes legacy. The email arrived 3 days after we returned. I had just come back from a morning walk, the ocean still whispering in my ears. My suitcase was halfway unpacked, a half-eaten pineapple wrapped in the fridge, the scent of plumeria still clinging to my clothes. I sat down at my desk, opened my inbox, and there it was. Subject: just want to clear the air from Nathan. I stared at it for a long moment before clicking. Hi, Mom. We're back now. It was, well, not quite what we imagined. A lot went wrong, obviously. And I guess some of that was our fault. I'm not saying everything was handled perfectly. Maybe things could have been communicated better. Tanya says hi, by the way. She was really stressed and didn't mean to exclude you like that. I think maybe she just wanted the trip to feel a certain way. You know how she gets about structure. Anyway, I've been thinking, maybe we weren't fair. Maybe we messed up, but we're home now and trying to sort through a lot. Honestly, the kids are confused and we're trying to shield them from too much drama. That said, we're in a bit of a bind financially. We had to rebook a bunch of stuff on credit and it's kind of snowballing now. So I just wanted to ask if you're able, could you maybe consider returning the original deposit we gave for the trip, or even part of it? I know you probably feel hurt, but we're still family. Just let me know. Nathani read it once, then again, then a third time. Each time, my eyes found their way back to one sentence. If you're able, could you maybe consider returning the original deposit? I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence sit thick in the room. They wanted the money back, not an apology, not healing, not reconciliation. They wanted a refund. I thought about the word deposit as if they had invested something, as if they had contributed to a collective vision. But they hadn't deposited anything but assumption. Assumption that I would pay, that I would remain silent, that I would feel grateful to be included, even on the outskirts. I clicked into the sent items folder and found the original transaction records. Every payment had come from my name, my account, my sacrifice. There had been no shared fund, no cosign contribution, just me. They were asking me to give them my money to cover the cost of their choices. It would have almost been funny if it weren't so familiar. Because that's what mothers do, right? Pay the bill, swallow the insult, hold the pain, hand over the blessing, get erased from the photo, but still by the frame. I closed my eyes and pictured the dining table in Hawaii, 6 women laughing, clinking glasses, passing bread. James smiling from the center in his walnut frame. No demands, no expectations, just presence. Just peace. Then I thought of Nathan's email, the absence of any real apology. The presence of excuses. The convenient inclusion of Stephanie's stress. The vague suggestion that I should just understand. But understanding doesn't mean surrender. And love without respect is not love at all. I reopened the email, hovered over the reply button, then closed it. Again. There was nothing I needed to say. Because if you need to, explain why you won't refund. Betrayal. The person asking never deserved an explanation in the first place. I folded the laptop shut and went to the kitchen. I poured a glass of iced tea and looked out the window. A bird dipped low across the yard, brushing past the wind chime James had bought on our 35th anniversary. It sang a note as light as memory. And I smiled. I may not have received a true apology, but I no longer needed one because I had something better. I had clarity, and I had kept what was mine. I sat on the beach one last time before we left Hawaii, toes buried in the warm, forgiving sand, watching the tide roll in like breath itself. The sky was the kind of pink that only appears in postcards or memories you swore you'd forgotten. Behind me, the villa glowed with the sounds of women laughing, not loudly, not for show, but in that low, full way that comes from somewhere deep, from someplace healing. Frances was telling a story about the time she took the wrong bus and ended up 3 towns away from her wedding rehearsal. Carol was trying to teach Beverly howled to hula with a flower tucked behind one ear. Diane was singing an old lullaby under her breath. And Nora Sweet Nora was writing a postcard to herself, addressed to the home she said no one had written to in over a decade. I watched them and thought, this is what family looks like when no one's trying to impress each other. Just presence. Just joy. Just permission to be . It had taken me a long time to understand that love doesn't come with volume. It comes with consistency, with showing up, with listening, with choosing someone even when they're no longer convenient. That night after dinner, we gathered outside on the patio. I pulled out the last candle. Lavender. I had brought 7. 6 were already lit, each one by a different woman, each one carrying a memory, a name, a goodbye they'd never been allowed to say aloud. Now it was my turn. I set James's photo at the center of the table. The women fell quiet. I held the matchstick in my hand. This, I said softly, was supposed to be for all of them, for my family. But I think maybe it was always meant for this. I struck the match. The flame flared, then steadied. I lit the candle and watched the wax begin to melt, slow and certain, like time itself. One of the women, Beverly, reached over and touched my hand. I didn't think I'd feel this again, she whispered. Peace, gratitude, like I mattered. She looked at me, tears welling in her eyes. And I didn't think it would come from someone like you. Someone like me? I asked, smiling. Someone who knows, she said, what it's like to give everything and still be left outside the door. I didn't respond. I just held her hand a little tighter. After the candle burned for a while, I stood up and walked down to the edge of the beach. The women followed behind me slowly, barefoot, each, carrying a seashell or a ribbon or a single written name tucked in their pocket. We formed a circle in the sand. No ceremony, no script, just silence. And then I said it, not to them, not even to James, but to the part of me that had needed to hear it most. I'm not sad anymore, because I wasn't. I wasn't angry either. I wasn't waiting for Nathan to call. I wasn't hoping Stephanie would realize what she'd done. I wasn't holding out for some teary reunion where everyone finally understood how much I had carried. I had stopped carrying it. And for the first time in decades, I felt light. I thought about that email, that pathetic, calculated attempt to turn apology into negotiation. I thought about the years I spent trying to be enough for people who only saw me when they needed something. And I smiled. Not the kind of smile you wear at family gatherings where you're handed a paper plate and told to sit at the kids' table because there's no more room. No. This was retricontineth. Kind of smile that comes when you realize you were never the problem. You were just giving your best to people who'd already decided it wasn't enough. That's when the words came, quiet as the wind. Kindness breeds entitlement. So I erased that kindness. And now I owe nothing to anyone. Not because I was bitter, because I was finally free from expectations that had only ever drained me, free from the weight of false belonging, free from the performance of motherhood that required constant sacrifice, without ever being asked if I was okay. I stood at the shoreline and let the waves come to me. They wrapped around my ankles and pulled at the sand like they were saying, let it go. So I did. I let go of the dream of a family that would hold space for me. I let go of the house I helped build but was never welcomed in. I let go of the quiet, endless reaching for approval I'd already earned 1,000 times over. And what remained was this, a handful of women, a villa glowing behind us, a husband's smile frozen in a photo, and a heart no longer begging to be seen. I turned back and looked at my chosen family and thought, I was never left behind. I simply found the ones who were walking my way. 6 months later, I received another email. Not from Nathan, from Stephanie's mother, Linda. Subject: I need to tell you something. G almost didn't open it. But curiosity 1. Margaret. I hope this message finds you well. I've been thinking about you a lot since the Hawaii trip that didn't happen. I need to be honest with you about something. Something I'm ashamed of. It was my idea to exclude you. Not Stephanie's, mine. I convinced Nathan and Stephanie that the trip would be too complicated with you there. I told them you'd slow us down, that you'd want to control everything because you paid for it, that it would be awkward having two matriarchs on one vacation. The truth is, I was jealous. Jealous that you were the one funding the dream trip. Jealous that the grandkids talked about Grandma Margaret's Hawaii adventure, like you were the hero of the story. Jealous that even though you'd been through loss and hardship, you were still generous and hopeful while I'm just bitter. When the trip fell apart, when we had to scramble and spend money we didn't have, when the kids cried because they didn't understand what was happening, I blamed you. I told everyone you were being petty and vengeful, but you weren't. You were being honest, and we were being users. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even deserve a response. But I needed you to know the truth. Nathan didn't come up with that text on his own. I wrote it. I told him exactly what to say, and I convinced him it was the right thing to do. I destroyed your relationship with your son because I was insecure about my own. I'm sorry, Margaret. Truly. I hope you found peace. God knows you deserved it more than any of us. Linda. I read it twice. Then I closed the laptop and walked outside to the garden. James's wind chimes sang in the breeze. I could have felt vindicated. I could have felt satisfied that the truth finally came out. But instead, I just felt tired. Tired of the whole story. Because even with the apology, even with the confession, it didn't change what had been done. It didn't give me back the years I spent doubting myself. It didn't undo the moment I sat at my kitchen table, reading that cruel text. It didn't erase the shame I felt when I realized I'd been building a dream for people who saw me as an inconvenience. So I didn't reply, not out of spite, not out of revenge, but because some chapters closed themselves. And this one had already ended the moment I clicked that freeze button. A week later, Nathan called. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Hi, Mom. His voice was small, different. Like a boy caught in a lie. Nathan. Silence. Then, did you get the email from Linda? I did. So, you know it wasn't really my idea. I mean, I went along with it. But, Nathan, I interrupted gently. It doesn't matter whose idea it was. You sent the text. You made the choice. You're a grown man. You don't get to hide behind someone else's jealousy. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something I didn't expect. You're right. I blinked, surprised. I've been thinking a lot, he continued, his voice shaking slightly, about Dad, about how he used to talk about you. He'd say, your mother is the strongest person I know. Not because she's loud, but because she knows when to walk away. My throat tightened. I didn't understand what he meant back then, but I do now. Nathan, no. Let me finish, please. I stayed silent. I let Stephanie's family convince me that you were. I don't know. Too much, too involved, too emotional. They made you sound like a burden, and I believed them because it was easier than standing up for you. He took a shaky breath. But the truth is, you were never too much. I was just too weak. Tears stung my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I don't expect you to forgive me, Nathan said quietly. And I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for anything except maybe one day, if you're ever ready, Maybe we could try again. Not like before, but something new. Something honest. I looked out at the garden, at the bird bath, at the flowers I'd planted in James's memory. Nathan, I said softly, I forgave you a long time ago, but forgiveness doesn't mean going back to the way things were. It means accepting what happened and choosing how to move forward. So, what does that mean for us? It means if you want a relationship with me, you'll have to build it from the ground up. No assumptions, no entitlement, no expectations that I'll just be there whenever it's convenient for you. I understand it means you'll have to show me, not tell me that I matter. I will. And it means you'll have to accept that I have a life now, a full one, with people who chose me first. I know, he said, his voice breaking. I saw the photos from your trip with those women. You looked happy. I'm glad, Mom. I really am. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Nathan asked quietly, do you think Dad would be proud of you for what you did? I thought about James, about his laugh, about the way he used to say, Maggie, don't let anyone make you small. Not even me. Yes, I said. I think he would be. I think so too. After we hung up, I sat in the garden for a long time. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold dot, and for the first time since this whole ordeal began, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope, not the naive kind that ignores reality, but the earned kind that comes after you've walked through fire and realized you didn't burn you transformed. If this story touched something deep in you, if you've ever poured your heart into a family that forgot you, if you've ever been erased and had to write yourself back in, then you belong here, because this isn't just my story. It's the story of every woman who gave until there was nothing left, only to discover that nothing left was actually the beginning of everything. I learned something on that beach in Hawaii, surrounded by women who understood what it meant to be overlooked. I learned that family isn't always the people you're born to. Sometimes family is the people who see you when everyone else looks away. Sometimes family is the people who make space for you at the table without being asked. Sometimes family is the people who celebrate your presence instead of tolerating it. And sometimes the greatest act of love isn't holding on. It's letting go of the people who only loved you when it was convenient. Letting go of the guilt that told you to stay small. Letting go of the belief that your worth is measured by how much you give, because here's the truth they don't tell you. You don't owe anyone your pain. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone access to your resources, your time, your heart, just because they share your DNA. Love is a choice, and if they chose to exclude you, you're allowed to choose yourself. That's not selfishness. That's survival. That's strength. That's freedom. So if you're sitting there right now, wondering if you should send that text, make that call, write that check, sign those papers, show up to that event where you know you're not really wanted, ask yourself this: if I disappeared tomorrow, would they mourn me? Or would they mourn what I gave them? If the answer makes you uncomfortable, you already know what to do. Choose you. Choose peace. Choose the people who chose you first. And if that means spending holidays alone, or blocking numbers, or freezing accounts, or walking away from people you've loved your whole life, do it anyway. Because on the other side of that hard choice is a life where you're not just seen, you're celebrated. Where you're not just tolerated, you're treasured. Where you're not just invited, you're essential. I found that life on a beach in Hawaii with 6 women who knew my name, my story, and my worth. And I didn't need a single person who forgot me to validate it. That's the power you hold. The power to say, no more. The power to reclaim what's yours. The power to build a new table and decide who sits at it. So here's my final message to you. Don't wait for an apology that may never come. Don't wait for people to realize your value. Don't wait for permission to choose yourself. Just do it. Click the button. Freeze the account. Walk away from the table. Book the trip. And when they ask why, when they demand an explanation, when they accuse you of being dramatic or selfish or cruel, say nothing. Because silence, when used with intention, is the most powerful response of all. It says, I no longer owe you explanations for protecting my peace. And that, my friends, is how you take your power back. My name is Margaret Hayes. I'm 67 years old. And I am no longer invisible. Not because anyone finally saw me, but because I finally saw myself. And that made all the difference. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and drop a comment telling me, have you ever had to choose yourself over family? What happened? Let's talk about it below. Because when we share our stories, we remind each other, you're not alone, you're not wrong, and you're not too much. You're exactly enough. Thank you for listening.